Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi, 1 week at a time. We are on our fifth lesson of Masechet Beitzah, and today we are going to be reviewing Daf 31 through 35, Lamed Aleph through Lamed Hey. And this is our penultimate shiur for Masechet Beitzah, meaning next week we will finish up Masechet Beitzah together. If you're following with the calendar, then it officially ends on Sunday. So we will finish it on Tuesday. We're going back to our regular schedule. So we will finish it together on Tuesday night, and then we will start Masechet Rosh Hashanah the same evening, meaning on Tuesday night we will finish Masechet Beitzah and begin the first two dapim of Masechet Rosh Hashanah. So I'm hoping everyone had a wonderful Sukkot and a wonderful Shabbat Breshit, and now we are back to I guess our regularly scheduled program. Here in Israel, they call it Acharei HaChagim. It is after all the holidays, and now we're back to some normalcy. So looking forward to teaching again back on a Tuesday. So let's begin on Daf 31. On Daf 31, we have a Mishnah that says that you can bring wood from the field if it was gathered before the festival. Again, in today's shiur, we're going to talk about designating things before the festival for the festival, meaning, as we learned previously, the idea of Muktza, right? Something that has not been designated before Shabbat or the festival may not be used on Shabbat or the festival because it was put aside, right? Muktza means put aside. If you do want to use it, you need to designate it before Shabbat or the festival. That's number one. Number two, the concept, and we've learned this already before, but we're going to talk about it again this week. The concept that we are able to prepare food on the festival, again, as opposed to on Shabbat. On the festival, you're allowed to prepare food, and the question is, how far does food preparation extend? Is it only the actual cooking, or is it things that lead up to the cooking process? So we're going to see momentarily that you are not allowed to ignite a fire on the festival, but you can bring fire in order to maintain a fire. So at the top of Daf 31, the Mishnah tells us that you can bring wood from the field if it was gathered before the festival. You can bring even loose wood from an enclosure. This enclosure is called the karpef or karpaf. The Mishnah asks, what is this karpaf? And either it is something that's kind of a storage area that's close to the city, or we'll see this in the Gemara, it's under lock and key. Maybe if it's under lock and key, it shows that you are guarding it, and therefore it can even be further away. Again, it has to be within the tchum, within the 2,000 amot outside the city. But either it has to be close to the home or even further, but as long as it's locked, then it is okay to use the wood that is there. Okay, the Gemara now says that our Mishnah is an individual opinion, and we'll see what that means in a minute. The Gemara says that if you have leaves from reeds or vines, those are considered gathered, and that you can use on the festival. And even though they can be, but if you have things that can be scattered in the wind, then those are viewed as not gathered, and therefore you cannot use them on the festival. Again, the idea is they have to be gathered in the sense of being prepared to use for the festival. If they are not prepared, then you cannot use them. So the Gemara says on 31 that if you weigh down, let's say these reeds or vines, if you weigh them down, that shows that you are designating these things to be used on the festival, and therefore you can use them. And they are not muktzah. Again, as I mentioned, this karpaf, where you can store the wood and you can use it on the festival. The Gemara says that, as I said, it could be close to the city with or without a key, meaning it doesn't necessarily have to be a locked space, or it could be far or close, but either way, it has to be locked. And the Gemara says that the rule is that it's lenient in both ways, meaning it can be close and not locked, and it could be even much further away as long as it is locked. So that is the first part of Daf 31. The next Mishnah tells us that you cannot chop wood on the festival. Again, we said at the beginning that food preparation is permissible, but you can really chop wood before the festival, and therefore you should have done it before. And the Mishnah continues and says that you can't chop from a beam that broke on the festival. You can't use an axe or a sickle. These are utensils that are used for chopping, but you can use, the Gemara suggests, like a meat cleaver, because that is sharp and would do the job, but it's not what you normally do during the week. The Gemara says that the beams are designated for building, and therefore you cannot use them for firewood, and therefore they are muktza. Again, you may not use them on the festival. If the beam broke before the festival, then it's okay to use it for burning. The Gemara talks about this axe. Apparently, an axe has two blades. Here, the axe has like a wider side and a narrower side. You can use the narrow blade because that's not usually used for chopping wood, and therefore you can do that on the Chag, on the festival. The next Mishnah tells us that a room full of fruit that was sealed, so you couldn't get to it, on the festival, but a wall fell down. The question is, can you take the fruit from this area, from this room? So the Mishnah says that you can take fruit from the area, and you can even demolish the wall. So then the Gemara asks, how could you demolish a wall? We know, especially those of you who have learned Masechet Shabbat, that one of the forbidden actions on Shabbat is destroying, stira, right, to knock down a wall or a building. You're not allowed to do that. So the Gemara says, don't worry. This wall was not really a solid wall. It was actually stacks of bricks. And therefore, you can knock it down on the festival in order to get to your fruit. Okay. All right. The bottom of Daf 31 tells us that one can untie ropes that tie the door of pits and caves. You can't unravel them, and you cannot cut them because, again, that's stira, or you are opening up a knot, but you can't unravel them or cut them, but you can untie them. But if it's tied to a utensil, you can actually cut it or unravel it, because there is, we learned in Masechet Shabbat that there's no such thing as destruction when talking about utensils, and therefore that is okay to do on the festival. Okay, or even on Shabbat. Okay, Daf 32 tells us that a seal that's connected to the ground on Shabbat and on Yom Tov, right? You can seal something that's connected to the ground. The question is, can you use the whole area again, or can you use just the whole or just part of this utensil um, that again is broken and you want to use it for firewood. The third option is you can't use it at all. Meaning, let's say you have a utensil that broke. Can you use a whole utensil for burning? Only if it's broken, or you can't use it at all. It's actually a three-way discussion at the top of Daf 32. Okay, the next Mishnah on Daf 32 talks about making a lamp on, again, on the festival. Now, we said you're allowed to deal with fire. Again, in a minute, we'll talk about that you're not allowed to ignite the fire, but you are allowed to pass fire from one thing to another. So one might think that you can even create a lamp, right? If the fire isn't Muktza, so the lamp isn't either. But the Mishnah tells us on 32 that you cannot hollow out of a piece of clay, right, as you see on the top of this picture. Again, thank you to Daf HaChaim for beautiful illustrations. But you cannot hollow out a lamp out of clay on the festival itself. The Mishnah continues and says that you cannot make coal on the festival, and you cannot cut a wick into two. So we'll see what the case is in a minute. So the Gemara explains that what happens here when you're making a lamp, you're fashioning a kli. A kli is a utensil, and this utensil, right? It could be used by professionals, specifically a goldsmith, because it's small. It's a small utensil, and the Gemara says, well, but you haven't fired up this earthenware vessel, right? You haven't put it in the kiln, so maybe it would be okay. But the Gemara says no. When is it considered creating a utensil? The term in Hebrew is gmar milacha. When is the milacha, the action, the creative process? When is it complete? So you might think it's only complete, right? If anybody works in clay or pottery, generally, when is it complete? When it's been fired in the oven. But here the Gemara says that no, a depression in the clay is considered gemar melacha, and therefore you cannot do it on the festival. Right? The Gemara explains that it is considered useful even if you haven't put it in the kiln yet. Okay, let's continue. So the Gemara continues and says that you can't make frying pans either on the festival. Let's go to the coals. So again, coals are used by the goldsmith as well. The coals are used by the goldsmith. Sorry, so I take it back. When we were making the utensil out of the clay, that was for a lamp. That's not used by the goldsmith. For the goldsmith was the coal itself. And the Gemara says that you cannot make these coals. They can't be given to the bathhouse to heat up water or even to use in the sauna. Again, we were talking about cooking and food preparation, but you can't use this for other things. The next idea that the Gemara explains, we talked about cutting the wick into two. So the Gemara says that in general, you're not allowed to make wicks on the festival. Again, obviously on Shabbat, you can't do this. You might think that because you can light the wick on the festival, that you can make the wick on the festival. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, you need to you're able to do things on the festival that you need to do for the festival, but if you could have done it before the Chag, before the festival, then you should have done it. So the Gemara explains, let's say you let's say that you um, let's say you didn't prepare your wick. What can you do? Wait, hold on. Help. Okay. All right. She went off and she'll come back on. All right. I hope she can come back on. Okay. So what can you do? Let's say you need to light two lamps. You can see here in the picture a very ingenious way to fix this. You can put one wick into two lamps and then burn the middle to split the wick. So that is one way to go about it. You can see how this would create a two wicks for the two lamps. Okay, and since we're talking about wicks, the Gemara explains that you can trim back part of the wick on the festival, and then the Gemara says, since we're talking, excuse me, I'm sorry, since we're talking about wicks, the Gemara teaches 6 things about wicks for the festival. 3 are stringent and 3 are lenient. From here, the Gemara continues and gives us statements of Rav Natan bar Abba about how to behave, certain lessons for life, and 3 people whose life isn't worth living. So if you want the details, you can look back on Daf 32. From here, the next Mishnah talks about breaking things to use again on the Chag, on the festival. So the Mishnah says that you cannot break pottery or cut up paper on Yom Tov to use to grill your fish. Again, I might think because I'm cooking that everything is okay. No, you needed to do this before the Chag. You cannot clear out pieces of cement from the oven on the festival. Again, you should have done it beforehand. This is what's called mitaken kli. You are fixing your utensil, and that you should have done before the festival. But the Gemara says that you can press these things down and in order to make it easier to cook. The next item in the Mishnah tells us that you can't put 2 barrels next to each other to use as a support for a pot for cooking, right? And here you can see it. You can see it here. It's basically creating almost like an oven idea. The Gemara is going to explain why. You also can't support the pot with blocks of wood or with a door, right? That's the bottom picture. And you can't lead an animal with a stick on the festival. So let's try to understand what each one of these things are. Why can't you break pottery or cut paper to grill on? Again, the Gemara explains on Daf 32 that it's, again, you're fixing a kli or you're making a kli, right? You're making a new utensil. You're not allowed to do that on the Chag, on the festival. The oven, we talked about not being able to smooth the walls. However, the Gemara says that if your food is going to burn and it's preventing you from cooking, then you can clean out the oven so that the food won't burn. We said you're not allowed to move these barrels in order to create almost like an oven kind of thing here that you can see on the picture. But the Gemara says you can do this to use as a makeshift bathroom. Again, in the time of the Mishnah and the Gemara, there is no indoor plumbing. There's no bathroom. What did they do? They would take like 2 bricks or 2 pieces of wood, and then you'd sit, on those 2 pieces. So the Gemara says that you can do this to relieve yourself. But here you're making an ohel, you're creating a tent-like structure with the pot, and therefore it is not, you cannot do it. Okay, what about making a bonfire? The Gemara talks about different ways to make a fire. Wait, I think I have more pictures. 1 second. Okay, here is leading the animal. We said you're not allowed to lead the animal with the stick. And here is the cleaning out of the oven. Again, if you need it for baking, then it is okay. What about building? We said there's a problem with making an ohel. An ohel means like a tent. So how do I make a fire? Let's say, again, I'm not making it, let's say, in my oven, but I'm making a fire outside. So the Gemara says that you can't build it in the normal way. How do you normally make a fire, right? So you make the walls, or I don't know, my father used to do it like a teepee, but here the Gemara talks about like making walls, and then you put the other wood on top, and then that creates a large bonfire. However, if you build it from the top down, that is okay, meaning one person holds the top piece of wood, the other people put in the wood on the side, then it's okay. Again, this goes back to the concept that we've mentioned before, that we're talking about doing things with a shinui, doing things differently, and then we will understand why, and then basically it will be okay if you do it with a shinui. Okay, Lynn is asking about the animals. We're going to talk about them in 1 minute. Daf 33. The top of Daf 33 says, again, when you're stacking things, you should, again, hold the upper one and then build underneath it, because then it is a shinui. You're doing something in a different manner than you would normally do it during the week, and then it would be okay. All right, so then we talked about not using wood to support the pot, because the wood is only for burning, right? Again, we set aside wood for burning, not to support the pot. Or maybe it's set aside to support a door, or the Gemara adds a third opinion that maybe it's okay. So that's the issue with the wood supporting the pot. Okay, now we learned in the Mishnah that you cannot lead an animal with a stick. The question is why? So the Gemara says because it's Muktza. Again, it is not, you're not allowed to do this because it was not designated before the festival. Or maybe the Gemara explains, maybe it's because it looks like you're leading the animal to the market to sell, right? Again, we're not talking about, in your property. We're talking about outside. And it looks very, I guess I would use the word professional, or it looks like you're going somewhere for a purpose, and that is not right. It looks like you might be going to sell it, and that obviously is not okay on the festival. Yes, so I don't know if that answered your question, Lynn, but it is similar. It's similar to Shabbat, but different because on Shabbat, your animals are Muktza themselves because they have no purpose on Shabbat. But on the festival, you are allowed to use the animals. Again, you can slaughter them, you can eat them, so they are not Muktza. Again, we talked about as long as they were designated before the festival. A stick used as a spit cannot be used if it's moist. And if it's dry, it's a machloket if you can use it as a spit or not, right? Again, to roast meat with it. Or if it's dry, you can use it. And if it's a machloket, if there's a difference of opinion, if it's moist, if you can use it or not. Again, a moist stick would not be very good a moist stick would not be very useful if we're using it to grill. Because again, here the Gemara says, however, if you have a very large fire, you can use moist firewood because the fire is so hot, it will burn it anyway. So the Gemara says that the law is that you can use dry sticks, but not moist. Okay. One second. The animals are to rest on Shabbat, also on Yom Tov, is something that they benefit from or participate in. That is an excellent question. That is an excellent question. In general, we do not work our animals on the festival, just like we do not work them on the Shabbat. So I think the answer would be yes, in the sense that they are not allowed to be part of working on the festival as well. So I think that is the case. Excellent question. Thank you, Lynn. Okay, what about so the Gemara, just to finish up the Gemara here, the Gemara says that if you have an undesignated poker, right, again to stoke your wood on the festival, you cannot use it. Again, things must be designated in order to be used on the festival. Otherwise, they're considered Muktza, and they need to be set aside for the festival. They need to be set aside and you cannot use them. The Mishnah on 33 tells us that you can take wood chips and use them as toothpicks, and you can gather splinters of wood that are in your courtyard to burn. Again, because they're in the courtyard, they are considered mukhan, meaning designated, right? A field is very different than your courtyard, your chatzer. And if something is in your chatzer, in your courtyard, you can use it. And here, as I've mentioned already twice this evening, the Mishnah tells us on 33 that you cannot ignite new fire on the festival. Again, you can what's called lahavir esh, right? You can move fire from one thing to another, but you may not ignite it. You also may not extinguish it. The Mishnah finishes and tells us that you cannot heat up roof tiles to cook on, and we'll discuss why in a minute. So the Gemara tells us that you can use animal food as toothpicks also. They are not seen, they're not seen as muktza. Again, because you are allowed to feed your animals on the festival, the food itself is not considered muktza, it's considered designated, and therefore you can use it for, I would say, permissible actions. What about aromatic wood? The Gemara tells us it cannot be used. Again, what wood is permissible? Wood that you are going to burn in order to cook. Or, as we just mentioned, maybe straw or things that you're going to feed your animals. Everything in the middle is not allowed to be used. Again, wood in those days was used for building. That is not permitted on the festival. But the Gemara says that aromatic wood can be rubbed between the fingers in order to release the scent. Or maybe you can even trim it. And this is like a soft wood, and therefore you can trim it and it would be okay. But if it's hard, then you cannot trim this wood. Okay. Here, just an interesting kind of side point is a concept that we saw in Masechet Shabbat, which is the concept of patur aval asur, meaning you are not liable for doing a certain action. However, it doesn't mean that it is permissible, right? Meaning in Jewish law, we're normally used to the word permitted, mutar, or forbidden, asur, right? It seems like I can either do something or I can't do something. In Hilchot Shabbat, we have a new concept, which is something might not be completely forbidden, but you still shouldn't do it, right? And that's the concept of patur aval asur. You are not going to get punished for it, but still it doesn't mean that you should go ahead and do it. And here the Gemara uses it for this idea of this aromatic wood, right? If you only want to use it to smell, or if you broke it off to use as a toothpick, these are things that are not necessarily permitted, but they also aren't necessarily forbidden. So it's an interesting in-between concept. As we mentioned in the Mishnah, the Gemara says that anything in the chatzer, in the courtyard, is considered mukhan, is considered designated or ready to be used. You cannot make piles of it. Right, again, if you want to gather the things in the courtyard, you cannot start making piles. That looks like you're gathering just for the sake of gathering, not for anything in particular. And it also might look like you're gathering for tomorrow, which would be problematic. Or as long as you're using it on the festival, it's okay in any way that you gather it. The Gemara asks at the bottom of 33, what is the issue with igniting fire, right? And the Gemara explains that lighting fire is molid. I am creating something new. And when you create something new, that is problematic on the festival. You can, however, as I mentioned, you can add to the fire. The Gemara on Daf 34 continues and talks about these roof tiles, right? The Mishnah said that you cannot heat up these roof tiles in order to cook on them. The question is why? So there are two options. One is that, the Gemara explains that we're talking about new tiles, and there are two options of why this would be problematic. One is that new tiles, and again, anybody who's worked with pottery, when you make something and then you heat it up really hot, it has the potential to shatter or crack. So new roof tiles, we are not going to permit you to heat them up lest they crack and then you did something without any purpose because now you can't use them to cook. The other option is that you are completing the process of these tiles, meaning it's not that I'm concerned that maybe it will crack. Rather, I know that it needs to harden. Again, this goes back to Gmar Melacha, and therefore you may not heat up these roof tiles on the festival. The Gemara continues on Daf 34 that one can slaughter a chicken that has survived 24 hours after being injured. So let's just take a step back, right? Animals that are healthy are able to be slaughtered and eaten in a normal way. That's number one. There's a concept called treifa. Treifa means an animal that is severely injured and that it's going to die. Again, there's a machloket if it's going to die in the next 24 hours or if it's going to die within a year. But there's something very wrong with this animal. This animal may not be eaten. Or another option is during the week you can slaughter the animal and then you can check what damage was done to the internal organs, and if things look okay, you can eat the animal. So what happens? The Gemara says that in general, if an animal sustains injuries, but it survives for 24 hours, you can shech that animal and eat it. That's opinion number one. Opinion number two is no, even after the 24 hours, when you shech the animal, when you slaughter the animal, you need to check and see what's going on internally, right, with all the internal organs. So now what's the connection to our discussion? The Gemara says or asks, can you slaughter this animal on the festival? Now again, we said you can slaughter animals on the festival in order to eat them. But this animal, if we're not sure if it's edible, maybe you cannot slaughter it, right? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. So it seems from our Mishnah that if it needs to be checked, then you cannot slaughter it on the festival. And they're getting it from the discussion with the tiles, because we said you can't heat them up lest, right, maybe they'll crack. So the same thing here. You cannot slaughter the animal because maybe when you check it, you will not be able to eat it. Or the Gemara says, no, our Mishnah is actually talking about the fact that it needs to harden. That's why you can't heat up the tiles. And it's not about checking. And therefore, we can't really decide one way or another based on our Mishnah. The Gemara continues and talks about what happens if a person lights the fire on Yom Tov. And then another, sorry. So a person lights the fire, and then another person brings wood, and then another person brings the pot, and another person brings the water, meaning a whole group of people each do an action that in the end is going to be cooking, right? You in the end, you have a pot of soup. So the Gemara says that if you do this on Shabbat, everybody is liable because each person did an action that was prohibited, right? Lighting a fire, burning the wood, cooking, heating up water, right? All of these things, are prohibited on Shabbat, and therefore you would be liable. However, if they brought all the things, but they only light the fire at the end, then everybody is patur, is exempt. Only the last person is really the person who's cooking because you light the fire, the pot is already there, and you're going to be cooking all at the same time. The Gemara adds that if the pot is new, then you also cannot put it on the fire even empty because, again, you're hardening the clay, and that is problematic. Okay. The next idea in the Gemara is that you cannot strengthen an oven by pouring cold water on it. Again, on the festival. Again, if anybody has worked with, I would say, any craft that has to do with heating something up and then cooling it down very quickly, right? Glass blowing, blacksmith, again, pottery. There are things that need to, I guess pottery you wouldn't cool down quickly, but other things you would. So here, right, that is how you strengthen these things. Again, this should not be done on the festival. From here, where the Gemara continues and talks about other types of food preparation, right? So we talked about slaughtering the animal. We talked about cooking it. What about removing the hair from the animal? So the Gemara says that you can put it in boiling water or pour boiling water over the head or the legs of the bird in order to remove the hair, but you cannot use certain substances that remove hair, right? Because this is how the tanners remove the hair from the hide, and therefore that is not permissible on the festival. You're also not allowed to use scissors or shears because that's how, when you were shearing the sheep, that's how you did it, and therefore, for cooking purposes, you cannot do that. However, it's not really about the effort, and therefore, if you are preparing a vegetable dish that is very intricate and you need to cut it up in a certain way, that is permissible on the festival. The Gemara continues and tells us that you may not use a bellows. So I brought you a picture. A bellows, right? The thing that blows, I would say, directly to the fire in order to increase the heat. Again, this looks very professional. Again, here the term is ma'aseh uman, the way a professional person, an artisan, would fan the flames, and therefore you may not use it, but you can use a pipe or something else in order to fan the flames. And the last thing of this Mishnah is that you cannot, again, fix or make a spit for roasting. Okay, the next Mishnah on Daf 34 tells us that, excuse me, tells us that you can stand by things on Friday afternoon, on Erev Shabbat, and designate them to use on Shabbat. And interestingly, the Mishnah talks specifically about a Shemitah year. So again, beautiful connection to our daily lives. So on a Shemitah year, on Friday afternoon, you can designate the things that you want to use on Shabbat. On Shabbat, yes. Or, says the sages add, that you actually need to designate these things physically. It's not enough to designate them verbally. We actually had a similar machloket in the beginning of the Masechet when we were talking about the birds that you were going to get ready for the festival. Here we're talking about on Shabbat. So the Gemara teaches us that food designated for Shabbat is you're obligated to separate the tithes, the ma'asrot, from them, even if you're eating them as a snack. So just to remind us, when you are in Israel, one must separate Trumot and Ma'asrot. These are the tithes and different gifts that were given to the priest or to the Levite at the time of the Beit HaMikdash. We also still do it nowadays, but nowadays we don't give it to a Kohen, we actually dispose of it. But if you're eating something as a snack, then you do not have to separate the tithes beforehand. Therefore, let's say you are in Israel and you go to pick fruit from a tree. When you are actually in my neighborhood, we actually have a famous cherry festival. If anybody is here in June, we have a cherry festival here, and they say all you can eat cherries while you're in the field, and therefore, you do not have to, because it's in the field, because it's a snack, you do not have to separate the Trumot and Maasrot first. However, if you're sitting down for a proper meal, now you need to separate the Trumot and Maasrot. So interestingly, and we're going to see as we continue to the next daf, what is going to create the necessity to separate the Trumot and Masrot. So one idea is sitting down for a proper meal. That's number one. Number two, the Gemara says, Shabbat creates that necessity to separate Trumot and Masrot. The idea is that our meals are supposed to be they're supposed to be joyous, right? Oneg Shabbat, they're supposed to be joyous, and therefore even a snack is viewed as serious, and therefore you do need to separate Masrot if you're going to eat it on Shabbat. Now, again, you separate these ma'asrot before Shabbat. So the Gemara continues and says that if you're drying figs in your courtyard, okay, so again, in those days, sometimes they would eat their produce fresh, but many times they would dry their produce, and therefore it would last longer. So on Daf 34, the Gemara tells us that if you're drying these figs in your courtyard, so now they're not chayav, you are not obliged or obligated to separate ma'asrot from them because they're not fully processed yet. Because they haven't finished drying, you do not have to separate the trumot and masrot, and you can even snack from them. However, Shabbat does, as I mentioned, does make it a proper meal, even if you're having one or two, and therefore you need to designate it before Shabbat, and you need to separate the Trumot and Maasrot before Shabbat. And therefore the Gemara says that you can only designate these things before Shabbat of Shemitah, because on a Shemitah year, and this is also very practical advice for all of you who are living in Israel, on a Shemitah year, you're actually patur, you are not obligated to separate Ma'aser from your produce on the Shemitah year, because it's all seen as hefker, meaning ownerless. And therefore, if something is ownerless, it is not chayav in Ma'aser. Interestingly, the bottom of 34, the Gemara tells us that if someone went ahead and separated the masrot on Shabbat, which we said you're not allowed to do, if they did it, then the food is actually allowed to be consumed on Shabbat, because it seems the issue is rabbinic in origin and not biblical, and therefore you can eat it, even though you should not do this on Shabbat. But if you did, you can eat it. Okay. The Gemara on Daf 35 tells us that you can take olives from a big vat, and again, you can eat them one at a time, because again, you do not have to give maaser, because again, you're in the process of processing these olives, and you're snacking. If he eats a lot of them, now that's seen as a meal, and therefore you need to take maaser. Rabbi Eliezer says that maybe our case is actually talking about purity and impurity, right? So if the olives are pure and the person is impure, then you need to take maaser from it. And if the olives are impure, you do not need to separate maaser. Why? So the Gemara explains that the person is impure. So if the person is impure and he took from the pure olives, he cannot now return them back to the barrel, and therefore he needed to separate maaser before he took it. However, if he's impure and the olives are impure as well, they're tameh, so then he could return them back to the barrel, and therefore it's like a snack, and you do not need to separate the maaser. So the Gemara says maybe where our Mishnah is also talking about things that are pure, and he is tameh or impure as well, and therefore you can't return it. And that's why you need to take maaser. And the Gemara says, no, that's not the reason. It's because you didn't designate them before before Shabbat. Now, if the Gemara also tells us that if you take off trumot, right, the gifts to the priest, so Rabbi Eliezer says now, even if you normally would not be normally, if you would not need to take maaser from these fruits, let's say either in the middle of the process or you're just taking a snack, if you separated truma, so now you started the process and you need to separate maaser as well, even for a snack. What about if you eat a cluster of grapes that were not, you ate a cluster of grapes that, again, this is, the grapes are not processed yet. Again, in those days, most grapes were used for wine. So this is seen as unprocessed. And then you walk into your courtyard. So it seems that the Gemara says that you need to separate maaser now, or you can go back outside of your courtyard and finish eating what you were eating. The Gemara asks, what about if this is on Friday night? Can you finish eating your grapes? Again, it seems that the courtyard is also going to obligate you to separate maaser, or not, right? Maybe you just walk out of the courtyard and you finish eating it there, or maybe you put it aside and then after Shabbat, you eat it, you can eat it then. And therefore, the Gemara kind of gives a summary that Shabbat, or if you separated Truma, or your courtyard, or business dealings, all of these things, we'll explain the last one in a minute, all of these things obligate you to separate maaser. for fully processed foods. And this statement is to exclude all the other opinions that said that it does not obligate you to separate the maaser. What's the issue of business? So the Gemara explains that if you bought figs from somebody who is, again, is called an Am Haaretz, someone who we're not sure if he keeps all the laws, in a place where they normally dry these figs, right? You bought fresh figs and they normally dry it in this area, so that's considered unprocessed. So you can eat it as a snack, and then after you can separate maaser, but it's only a safek, meaning we're not sure if you need to separate the maaser or not, because, and here the Gemara says, this is teaching us that most, I guess you would say, non-halachic Jews at the time did actually separate maaser, and therefore you only have to do it on a rabbinic level and not on a biblical level. The last thing of the chapter, the Gemara says that if you barter fruit, right, this is a business deal, like a sale, and you need to take maaser from it because it's a sale, even if it's not fully processed. But if you're going to dry the fruit, so then you can only take maaser when it's finished. And with that, we finished the 4th chapter of Masechet Beitzah. And now we're going to start the 5th chapter with a new Mishnah, and we have some pictures. Okay, so the Mishnah tells us that you can lower fruit into your house through a skylight on Yom Tov, on the festival, but not on Shabbat. The question is, why are you doing this? First of all, you can see on top the word mashilin. Mashilin means to bring the fruit into your house. The idea is, you can see the little rain cloud on the picture. You are trying to dry your fruit. All of a sudden, you see the clouds coming. You do not want your fruit to get ruined. You can bring them into the house again in this interesting way. However, you may not do it on Shabbat. Again, it is not. It's considered doing too much work for Shabbat. For Yom Tov, it's not considered too much work. You want to save your produce. You can also cover produce. One second. We'll get to that in a second, but I think I have here. Here's covering your produce. Right? You can cover your fruit with cloth from getting ruined, or with a utensil. Again, we're scared that your fruit is going to get ruined. And the last thing, the Mishnah. I didn't bring you the other picture. Hold on. I have one more picture. The last thing. Oh no, I guess I didn't get the last picture. Sorry. The last idea in the Mishnah is that you can put a bowl or a utensil under a something that's dripping in order to protect the house. We're going to learn more about that next week. Interestingly, the Gemara here talks linguistically that there are different words for the concept of lowering your fruit. Again, you can see here, you cannot bring it in through the window, but you can bring it in through the skylight, which is much easier. You can clear away boxes. We learned this in Masechet Shabbat about clearing away boxes of grain for company in order to sit in your house on Shabbat or on Yom Tov. So here, maybe we can learn that you can lower 4 or 5 boxes into your house. But maybe we say those are two different things, right? One is about learning and guests. The other is about saving your fruit. Or maybe you can think of it the other way, that maybe to save your fruit, your produce, your harvest, maybe you can even move more of that. And we are going to continue this discussion next week. So I would like to wish everybody a Shavua Tov and a Shabbat Shalom. As I mentioned at the beginning, next week we are going to again learn our regular day and time on Tuesday at 9, and we are going to finish Masechet Beitzah together. So let's get ready for a siyum. And we are also going to begin, we'll do an introduction to Masechet Rosh Hashanah and learn the first two dapim of Masechet Rosh Hashanah. So wishing everyone a wonderful week and have a great week, and see you next week. Thank you, everyone.